This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. With today's new project, I want to make my grandmother's garden quilt. Today we're going to discuss fabric, templates, and cutting. And next week I'll have part 2, and it'll be Let the Sewing Begin. You may have seen my 90-year-old neighbor in the other video that we've made. Well, this was another quilt that she made way back in the 60s or 70s, and it's my grandmother's garden. I'm going to call it my posies in the garden, because all of them are different, all of the different parts, the flowers. And they used the hexagon, and it used a little bit larger hexagon, but not as big as the one I did earlier in that other quilt. This quilt, when it's finished, is 80 by 96 inches, and there are 28 of the flowers in the quilt. And if you look closely, you'll see different kinds of combinations and ways the flowers were put together, and there wasn't a repeat of any of her flowers, and so when I decided to do mine, I was going to do the same thing. So like always, I picked 2 colors that I liked to put together and went ahead and made one of the flowers. And at first it took me a minute, but once I got it, it goes really fast. And I might get to talking faster than I usually do because I really am liking this project. It's a lot of fun. The first thing I did is I went to see how many solids I had and whether they were soft solids or little stronger colors. And these were both on the darker and the lighter. But I said I'm going to go ahead and use these because they're nice clear colors. And then you're going to match your color up to another color, which will be the petals, the most petals in your flower. You're only going to need 13 of the solids, but you're going to need 24 of the flowered or striped or whatever you decide to put with that color. So what I did is I just picked up the color I liked out of the piles, and I went over to my piles of material, and I just had it touch different things. Sometimes you automatically know what you like that goes together, and sometimes you have to sort of hunt. And then sometimes I said, I don't think that's a solid I'm going to use in my quilt. At first, when you start, you'll just be picking colors that you really like, because when you think if you're going to go for 28, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to mix and match. But one thing you will do after you get probably about half of them done or 3/4 of them, lay them out and look and see, do you have some light colored outside edges and then some dark edges? And you can see here's an example of what I'm talking about, so that when you lay the flowers down, they're not all pale next to each other, unless that's the way that you want it to be. And then there's going to be one more color that's going to unify all of your flowers together that you're going to use in the background. And so you may already know what you're going to use. I didn't, so I made several of the flowers, and I went in because I didn't want to go buy any material. I wanted to use what I had. And so what I finally decided on was a cream color that's got some yellow in it. But remember that each of my patches is going to be cut small, and you won't hardly notice it. And once I got the flowers going so well, I got excited to see how that color was going to work, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. So now you've picked out a pastel color that you're going to use as the center, and then around the second row, and there, so that row is 12, and that one makes 13. And then when you're gonna have your darks, and you're gonna have 6 in the center, 18 on the outside, so you'll cut 24 of those at one time. For this quilt, we're going to do our templates a little bit different. You're going to see, I went online to get a 2.5 hexagon, and here's one of the companies that had it, and I could make this, and it gave me several samples. I didn't need them all. And we're going to do two things with that hexagon shape. The first thing I did was I cut the hexagon shape out of a heavier piece of plastic. I had the top of a peanut can, top of a coffee can, anything that's got a snap-on lid would work. And I traced that and cut it out, and then that was the end for that piece. Then for the next piece, I wanted it to be lighter because I wanted to be able to cut it as close as I could to the shape that I wanted. It's a little harder with the coffee can lid, but you need that sturdy for cutting and tracing. All right, and if you look at it, this is the same shape. And what I've done is gone around and marked 1/4 of an inch on each side. Now this is going to be different because before we were poking holes in the corners. This is such a small piece we're not going to do it that way. But we are going to take and we're going to cut off the 1/4 inch all the way around, and you'll have a smaller piece of template. And while we're talking about the smaller template, you can see these are patches that are cut from the larger. Then I'm going to take the smaller one, I'm going to lay it as close, as neat in the middle as I can. I'm going to take a mechanical pencil. Mechanical pencil doesn't make a very long line, a thick line, so it won't distort. And I'm going to take and I'm going to go all the way around this shape on the inside. It's a little hard with one hand, but you get the point. And then pretty soon, you're going to have this nice hexagon inside. And that's going to come in handy when we start sewing it together. All right, I'm going to come over to the cutting board for just a minute. And I went ahead and I've got a piece of the background material. I've got a lot of the flowers cut already, so I thought it'd be easy to see with this. And so the first thing I did is I folded my material in half, and I'm laying my ruler with the black line up here along the edge to make sure that it's straight on this edge. And you can see I've already trimmed off a piece, so I know that my material is going to be nice and square, and that's gone. Now what I want to do is, I found out that if I cut them 3 inches, a 3-inch strip, it gives you a little bit of room, and that was too much. So then I dropped it down to 2 3/4, and you can see that'll fit really nicely. So I'm going to take and cut a strip. And I'm going to cut another strip, and I can cut another strip. I would cut 3 strips at a time for the backing because I had a lot. Now, when you're doing the other petals inside, because you only need 13 of the light color of the plain and 24 of the other, you wouldn't want to make quite that many. So let's pretend I have all those. I have some strips because I'm doing my back together. So I'm going to lay this in here, and you can see this is pretty close, so I'm just going to turn it the other way, and I've got plenty of room. And I can fold my fabric in half again, or I can just go ahead and cut it into sections. And once I get as many as my good scissors will handle, or that I feel comfortable won't get distorted, then I'll go ahead and just cut those edges off straightly. And you can see why I wanted to have that stronger piece of plastic, because if you know, sometimes you can veer off, especially if your scissors are really sharp or you've put too many pieces of fabric together, and I just make a pile. Now, one of the things I learned was this material has two sides, and they're really hard to tell apart. You have to really have sun. So I would go in the sun and then put the whiter side up, the whiter side up, the whiter side up, and then again get that part. Then it was ready for me to take and put that little one on there and trace it all the way around. And you may have noticed that I used sandpaper. I could lay out 6 of the shapes on there and then move this from one to the next. I could move it from one to the next, and I'd have 6 done at a time, and then just add those to the stack when I got finished. Several times I had a special flowered piece that I wanted to use, but I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough material to do it. So what I actually would do is take and trace. I'd lay my template on, and I would trace that one, trace the next one, trace the next one, and then come up and do the next one in here like a beehive pattern going across, and that would help me to know whether I'd have the 28 pieces I needed for the flower or even the 13 that I needed for the center. And still talking about the fabric, if you're using a piece of 42-inch wide fabric, if you cut one 3-inch strip, that would give you 16 patches, and you only needed 13. When you get ready to cut the other part, if you have 42-inch fabric, cut 2 3-inch strips all the way across. You can layer those on top of each other. And then fold them, and you can get 24 out of that with some left over. And if you start on your first flower, to give it a try, you start in the center and then build around there. When you get ready to press, this is one of those times when you can choose the way you want to press, and actually pressing the fabric to one side or the other won't make much difference in the way it turns out, or opening the seams. So if you decide to go for the 28, it's going to be 6 in a row, 5 in a row, 6 in a row, 5 in a row, and then 6. And you can see I've already laid out what I've gotten finished so far. I've got about 6 more to do. And I've actually started cutting. Remember, I told you I got excited about the background, whether it would fit or not. And up here in the top left-hand corner, you can see that it almost has a yellow tint to it. Now, it might be against that carpet, but I really like the way it's looking, and I think it's going to pull my colors together. The other thing I did was, and I've done this before and I've said this before, is to take a picture. Don't just look at it through the camera. Go ahead and take a picture and then look at the picture, because I found one flower that stuck out more than any of the others. They all seem to go together. You see this bottom pink one on the right? It disappeared in the quilt. But she had some that did that also, and I'm going to keep it because I did a lot of work on that. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope you're going to like this project. Once you start sewing, and if you like hand sewing, this is a dream to work on. If you enjoyed this or learned anything this morning, please subscribe and hit like. And like comments, any comments. In part 2, I'm going to start doing the way I sewed mine. Thank you.